I want to ask Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports NBA, of course, talking a little NBA with him, what the difference he sees from this Sixers team. Is it more coaching related? Is it more roster construction? The 7-1 Sixers team, has it caught your eye, Keith Smith, as we bring you back to the Sports Bash of the Boardwalk Honda Hotline? A lot different feel around this Sixers team than when we last spoke.
Yeah, definitely. They're a lot more organized. I guess that is the best way I can describe them. They look like they are all on the same page, that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing together as a group, and I think that has made all the difference for this team. I think, having guys like Danny Green and Seth Curry, that has rebalanced the roster around Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris. And I think that's allowing everybody to flourish. It's just a team that makes a lot more sense with a coach that has really got them organized in doing what they do to their best ability.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the spacing on this team, because you watch Ben Simmons. He has still not really evolved his game that much, but having the room to roam has really helped him out more so than almost anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It was going to have to go one of two ways with Ben Simmons. Either Ben Simmons was going to have to change his game, or they were going to have to change the personnel around him. And clearly, I think we're deep enough into his career now where we know he's not going to all of a sudden start coming down and pulling up 5 or 6 times a game from behind the arc. So that really turned it into, all right, we know that you needed to get different personnel around him, and they've done that. I think they've done a really good job putting a roster together that makes a lot more sense with Simmons and Embiid than anything they've had in the last couple of years.
Do you think that this 8 games is a big enough sample size to look at and say, this is sustainable? I mean, you look at Seth Curry shooting over 60%. Yesterday, they shot 80% from 3 in the first half, scoring 82 points. They're scoring these obnoxious points, and the talent level they're facing isn't anything lethal. So I'm not trying to take anything away from them. I'm just trying to look at it objectively. Is this really who they are, or is there a lot of reasons why this is the outcome?
No, I mean, it's probably somewhere in the middle if you really get into it. I think that they are very good. And I think you're going to see them have some really good shooting nights. I know they had a couple poor ones earlier in the year, too, and they still managed to win those games. So I think what you'll ultimately see is, there's going to be nights where just things won't go down. And Danny Green, every season he has played, has had a stretch where he goes about 3 or 4 weeks where you're like, is this guy ever going to make a shot again? And then eventually he bounces back and looks really good. So I think what you'll see is them, just have to play through those tough periods to keep it going. And I think if they can do that, then there's no reason why they can't continue to be a very, very good team.
Joel Embiid, what looks different about Embiid? He's obviously upped his production. I mean, he's up to like 28 points a game. Last night, 38 points. But what do you see when you see Embiid about what's different about him?
I think he's fully engaged game to game and play to play. Joel Embiid's problem in his first, handful of years in the league would be that some games it's just he wasn't going to show up and it just wasn't going to go very well. And then you knew that there were going to be, even within games, he might come out and score 15 or 16 in the first quarter, and then you might not hear from him again the rest of the game. And I think what he's done this year is he's pacing himself a little bit better. I think the improved play around him helps that. He's allowed to kind of feel his way into games a little bit. He's also a little bit more mature now and knows, hey, I got to make it, 30, 35 minutes in this game and not just 20. I got to be good at the end, so I'm not going to use up all my energy in the first quarter and in my first, 8 to 10 minute stint. I'm going to, keep some in reserve. And I think that's made a big difference for him playing well all the way deep into the game.
Another player that took a big step this year is Tobias Harris. Now, we've seen him be successful under Doc Rivers before, but what have you seen differently from last year to this year?
Yeah, no hesitation from Harris this year. I think when he's getting the ball, he's doing whatever he's going to do. He's doing it quickly and decisively. And again, I don't want to keep harping on the same thing, but I think the spacing around makes that much easier, because when the spacing was all kind of, messy before, he would catch the ball. He'd have to kind of put himself in a spot where it would be, all right, now I got to figure it out. And am I going to attack off the dribble or do whatever. Where the spacing is better now, I feel like he's getting the ball, and whatever he's doing right away. And I think that's making a huge difference. And then defensively, him playing primarily more at the 4 than the 3, that makes a big difference. At the 4, he's a perfectly good defender. He's never going to be an all-defense guy or anything like that. But you have those guys. You have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid for that. I think what you're seeing with Harris is there's no power forward in the league that he can't defend and don't really kind of at least hold his own against. When he's at the 3, he's completely overmatched because he can't defend out on the perimeter. He's not going to defend guys off the dribble, so that causes him a lot of issues.
Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports NBA, and of course, Sixers tonight against Brooklyn right here on 97.3 ESPN. No Kyrie, no Durant, by the way. I'm sure TNT's thrilled. Curry. Have you seen? I mean, if you hadn't seen Curry and you just kind of it's Seth Curry's younger brother. Have you seen his game evolve more, or is this who he has been?
I think this is who he was last year in Dallas. I think you're seeing a guy, he can do just a little bit off the dribble. He's never going to be his brother as an off-the-dribble guy. He's just not quite that player. But what he understands is how to play with good players and how to move. Now, I think his time in Dallas with Luka Doncic really being kind of such a ball-dominant guy, he learned how to move into spaces and be there for passes. I would say last year, if you watched him and Tim Hardaway Jr. working with Luka Doncic, it was like a quarterback with a wide receiver where they kind of pass to the spot and just know the guy will be there. That's what Curry learned, and you're already seeing him do that with Ben Simmons, where Ben Simmons throws passes. There's been a couple times this year where if you don't know what's going on, you think he's just throwing the ball out of bounds, and then there's Curry. He trusts that he's going to get to that spot and get open for the shot. And I think that's who Seth Curry is. He's a guy he does have his issues. You can attack him defensively. You can kind of, at times even, kind of play him off the floor because of it. But as long as he's making enough shots, he's going to be in there making a huge difference.
After seeing him play a handful of games here and looking how smooth it is, I was thinking from Dallas's perspective, trading him for Josh Richardson. Now, you mentioned the defense, which he lacks. Josh Richardson has that. But how do you view that trade? Because this version of Seth Curry, I don't know how I could let that leave my team if I'm an organization.
Yeah, no, it was. This was one of those kind of classic win-win trades. It was good for both sides. Dallas needed another guy who you could give the ball to and he can do something off the dribble because everything was Luka Doncic last year. They didn't have another guy other than occasionally Tim Hardaway Jr. with the right defender on him that could do anything off the bounce. So Richardson has helped there. They needed another bigger guard because they don't want to put Doncic on anybody who's very good. They want to be able to conserve him for his offensive play. So they needed another big guard, another wing with size that could defend. And then obviously for Philadelphia, they needed anybody who could come in and make shots. So I think that's made kind of all the difference for both of those teams. And I think it's really one of those trades where as you look at it, it's worked out fantastic for both sides.
I know it's early. Have you changed your expectations for Philly?
No, I haven't. I had them second in the East going into the season behind only Milwaukee. I kind of said, they're either going to make me look good or they're going to make me look like an idiot. And I'll, live with whatever the outcome is. I was a big believer in them. I thought their roster construction made a lot more sense. But what my worry is what are they when we get to the playoffs? Because that's the concern. We know they can be a pretty good regular season team. We've seen it in the past. They've always kind of gone through that period where then they have some hiccups and it all kind of falls apart a little bit on them. But I think, we knew this is a playoff team, barring disaster. So I'm now concerned more with, all right, they're proven, unless somebody seriously gets injured or something like that, we know what they're going to be in the regular season. Now I just want to see, can they get to the playoffs and get past the first or second round?
Yeah, and I know it's a little ways off, but Daryl Morey's here. If he's trying to tinker, do you make the big move or do you look to just complement this roster?
As long as they keep going along the way they are. And I mean, let's be real. What are they, 7-1 right now or 6-1? I know they've only got the one loss. they're going to lose games. I mean, they're not, they're not going to go in a 72-game season. They're not going to go 62-10 or anything like that. There's going to be a period where they lose a couple in a row, and that's just how it goes in the NBA. But I think as long as they keep winning at a pretty good clip and guys stay healthy, Daryl Morey needs to really say, all right, I know I like to, swing for the fences when it's there, and I'll make big moves, but maybe it's just tinkering around the edges because, as you guys know, we've been, for as long as I've been coming on the show, they've always needed another guy or two off the bench, and they're kind of still in that position where they could use another guy or two off the bench, especially somebody with a little bit of size that I think they can trust that can play, maybe the 3-4 position for them a little bit more than the guys they have right now.
You brought up the bench, and Tyrese Maxey is absolutely stunning us with his great play at such a young age. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, I like what he knows who he is as a young player, which is not always all that common for a really young player. A lot of times you see those guys come in, especially a young guard, and it takes them a long time. But I think what they've done is they've put him in a position where it's come in and attack. That's all we really want you to do. Come in, make plays off the dribble. Doc Rivers has had success with young guards in the past by taking that same approach of, look, I just want you to kind of get after it. Just, when you're in there, go downhill, play off the bounce. We've seen a couple times he hasn't really had it, and they pull him out and just, and you deal with it and you move on to the next guy. And I think that's perfectly fine. So, yeah, I think he's a really good fit for them, and they've kind of got him in an ideal role for a young guard.
At Keith Smith NBA. Check him out on Twitter, of course. Obviously, the big story entering the year was James Harden. What do we think ends up happening with him?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just asked on another show, what happens with James Harden? How long are we waiting here? And I think it's going to be a while. There's a couple reasons for that. One is the Rockets want a big return package. They want 2 or 3 young players that are under team control that they can build around. They want a boatload of draft picks. They're looking at, all right, if Drew Holiday can get 3 picks and pick swaps, we want at least that for James Harden. And then the other piece is he makes $41 million. So you're talking a 2, 3, 4-for-1 trade. Those are hard to do in season because the team trading for him, you're basically giving up all of your depth. You're making that move. Now, that could be perfectly fine if you can replace it. And then on the Rockets side, you need to get them in a position where then they can take back 3 or 4 guys without, with having enough roster spots and those kind of things. They're working under the hard cap, so that's a tricky part for them as well. So I think what you're going to see ultimately with the Rockets is it's going to take a little while for this to come together. Now, what's good on their side is teams like Toronto are really struggling out of the gate. Does Masai Ujiri look at it? This guy's got more cachet than anybody. So, he can kind of say, I can make the home run swing without worry of getting fired or anything like that. Does he look at it and say, yeah, this is the move to get us back on track, get us back to being a playoff team and competitive again? And if he goes that way, then you could see a move coming. But I think it might be a little bit.
All right, Sixers and Nets tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. He's Keith Smith, at Keith Smith NBA. Follow him on Twitter. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Always great stuff, Keith. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Happy New Year. Y'all stay safe, you and yours.